The antidote for I don't know what to do, amongst others, is ask yourselves the question, have I developed all my pieces? Are all my pieces activated, attacking, developing, posing problems to my opponents? Especially in the end game, well, not that in the opening and middle game that doesn't apply, because the principle of activating your pieces and targeting your opponent's weaknesses, it is valid and perennial, never stops. Just in this position now, we're going to look very practically at a couple of scenarios now. What are my opponent's weaknesses? And have all my pieces been developed attacking, very actively engaged in attacking my opponents? And now you will be able to identify there is one weakness here on a2 and another potential weakness on f4, because those pawns are actually isolated. So your opponent will have to put pieces to defend those two pawns. How do you attack them? You got it right, is with the black rook on g7. Now you got two ways to get there. You're either going to go this way, or you're going to go on the g3 or the g2. The problem is with the g2 that you might be thinking that it directly targets the pawn, that actually your opponent might be very well playing the rook over to a4, defending and attacking your black pawn. So actually, you do something with tempo now. You're going to be attacking the king, king's going to move away, and then you're going to plop your rook very nicely on a3, targeting this guy and supporting your black pawn. So let me just do this. Checks, white king has to move, and now you're going to play rook to a3. That does a couple of things. Attacks a2, protects your guys, and the rook on the a file is more than ready now to target actually the king and the f4 pawn. Now they have to, because they were desperate, they had to defend the pawn, and exactly as we said, you're going to take advantage of the fact that rook had to move down to defend the pawn to attack the king and the pawn behind him. Nice little skew. When the king moves away, you're going to fix the weakness now. You got to make it another habit into your games to be fixing your opponent's weaknesses so you can target more efficiently with a second attacker. And now you're going to do just that. King to f5, double attack on the f4 pawn. You're going to take that guy no matter what. Of course, now the rook's going to say, well, I'm going to stop you. Well, it's just for a while, because now you're going to play something with the tempo, checking the king. If they get in front of your, behind the pawn, so to speak, you're going to take, they're going to have to step away. You're going to take the rook, and now you've just created a passer. And whilst the white king will be busy to stopping your black pawn on the e file from promoting, your king is going to march nicely over to the a file, remove this guy, and there you go. You've got yourself to passer. Black is simply winning at this stage. It doesn't matter what the white king does, because that pawn on f4 will disappear. Pieces activity matters absolutely, my chess friends. Now, you have a choice. Do you play defensively, or you try to create a bigger threat or a counter attack? You could either do rook a3, which is painfully defensive, unnecessary, or you think of something else, maybe a more brutal way to attacking your opponent. And yes, you have found it. It's rook to d1 that already announces that you want to get your rook here, checking the king, forking, attacking this guy, potentially the guy behind them on h file, and actually you're doing very well. And if they try to stop you, of course you're not going to give them the b3 white pawn. This is important. So you're going to play rook to d3, keep an eye on this guy. Your rook has a lot of flexibility for targeting the other two separate isolated black pawns. It's doing well. You're not doing worse than black here. On the contrary, maybe a little bit of an advantage here for white, given the fact that they've got two isolated pawns. The next position. What is the black piece that actually doesn't do a great deal of nothing? There is one particular piece, and it's the beautiful, powerful queen, which is just in the corner. You got to make sure the black queen is active, developed, attacking. So, apparently, an apparently innocuous move here. It's the queen to h7, but actually that means a lot, because the queen, with the help from the knight, and not necessarily if you just consider the skewer, you would be able to play a devastating move here, infiltrating, activating your queen, and making trouble for the white king here. Again, we've got a skewer. Again, the queen can also play on d3, and targeting, very important, those guys on the white pawn on b3, which defends the c4 and a4. Very important. Now, if they try to play the queen, remember, you've got the old idea with queen to c2, targeting here and attacking the pawn on b3. King has to move. I'm recording, sweetie. King moves away, but now you're going to play an in-between move. You're going to block the white queen from protecting b3 by placing the knight in between the queen and the b3 white pawn. So whatever they do now, they can't really stop you from capturing this guy. The position is incredibly promising for black, looks very good. That guy is going to disappear, and you're doing very well. You should be winning because those guys will be captured. Let's look at the next scenario here, guys. What black piece is actually quite idle? We can't tolerate that. You can't let your pieces doing nothing. Is this rook here? Rook behind the pawn. Now, if this guy was a passer and there was no white pawn on the A file, of course, you would say push, push, push. Okay, I understand, but now you do have a white pawn. Therefore, you must do something else. The black rook is super happy to be on an open file. Remember, the bishops and the rooks are happy on open files, open diagonals. Because now you have claimed the B file. Your opponent will not be able to move the white rook on the B file because your rook already claimed it. Very important. That means power, dominance, control. You're going to get your rook, eventually given a chance. You're going to plop the rook there, attacking here, devastating. Fabulous little idea, getting the rook on open files, and incredibly potent and strong. Now, king attacks the black rook. What do? Do we run away? Don't play defensively if you don't have to. So instead of moving the rook away, you are reinforcing the black rook now by playing very nicely, b7 to b5. And even if they take, again, your rook is incredibly active as it is now. I am recording. Please give me a couple of minutes and come back later. Thank you. So let's look at another scenario. What black piece actually is very, very much not doing nothing now? It's the bishop on g7, which, if you remember, guys, we did say that in the previous lessons. The bishop behind the pawn, it's not a great idea. Never keep your bishop behind your own pawn because that bishop does not exist. In a practical way, it doesn't exist. It's being blocked, blinded by its own pawn. So when this thing happens, push the pawn forward, because the result is, look at this powerful bishop now cruising on the g7, b2 diagonal now, doing a lot of attacking power on that dark square diagonal. Beautiful. Next scenario. What is the white piece here that absolutely slumbering? Yes, you've got it. It's the knight on e2. Now look, the knight on e2 can't play here, can't play here. Here it doesn't make any sense. Here is the rook and here is the black pawn. And here is another black pawn taking on that square. What do? Well, it's time for you to dismantle the pawn structure that deems your knight incredibly ineffective. And you have found there is a very nice little tactical sacrifice here. b3 to b4. And you would say, why would I give a pawn? Well, you do give a pawn because in the moment they capture, if they don't, you would have taken anyway. So when they take, you actually play with your knight on d4. And now your knight is very active. Attacks this guy, controls here, and it's a beautiful knight, unchallenged by the bishop because your knight is on a dark square and this bishop goes on light squares. So your knight does incredibly well now, plus defending this guy here. So that might be that you free up your powerful queen. Okay, let's go for another scenario here. What have we gotten? A situation in which the bishop on h8 is painfully inactive. You cannot tolerate that. And if the price for getting that bishop active is to sacrifice a pawn, you must do it. Okay? There is no point to have on a paper a piece if in a practical way that piece doesn't do anything. So remember this for your future reference, my chess friends. If a piece exists on the board, it doesn't mean that actually practically they do something. In order for that piece to exist in an efficient fashion, you need to make sure that the bishop is enjoying an open diagonal or the rook enjoys an open file. So now don't be afraid, just give that pawn because your bishop is completely doomed if you don't do that. And whilst the white would be busy to just capturing your guy here, then you have just unleashed a monster upon your opponent because you're going to play something like bishop c3. Just consider, rook won't be able to defend. They're probably going to be playing this. They are this desperation. The knight is being pinned. And even if they do rook to e2, you're going to be challenging them with bishop to d1. And really, this is incredibly problematic for your opponent. I have no good moves for white at this stage. So that was just a couple of scenarios, guys, to make it clear for you how important is activate your pieces, developing them, posing problems to your opponent, getting them on open diagonals, those beautiful bishops, get the rooks on open files, keep them active. If there is a scenario in which you have to give up on a pawn in order to exercise a powerful attack, do it because it will pay off. Okay, so thank you for watching this video, guys. Join me on my live stream or on my next YouTube video will be uploaded, and we'll definitely surely meet up again. Thank you.